Hey guys, this is Whyt Manga here with a new video on how to color manga eyes in 4 simple ways. First, you're going to need to pick a color, one of a lighter shade and the other of a darker shade. First, for the eye that we're going to color, I've picked purple, and we're going to go in with the lighter shade. The goal here is to kind of create, initially, like a flat surface. So I'm trying to create, my goal is to create something flat with the purple, also with the intention of, after doing that, you want to go over the purple with the same color, not yet touching the darker shade, but going over it around the eyes and underneath the highlights, which is like that little white at the upper right. The highlights are just basically light shining on the eye, so you can just imagine that there's a white light in the room shining on it, on his eyeball. And then you want to kind of go over the same eye, but I try to go darker at the top, right? And then around the eye, darker in the middle of the eye, and then darker around the highlights to kind of emphasize on that shine. So here I pick the darker shade of the color, and I basically just go over all the places I tried to make darker with the previous color initially. So that's like the top, around the middle of the eye, and around the highlights, just to even give more emphasis on the highlights, and it'll show more contrast between the upper dark part of the eye and the lower part of the eye, which is lighter. And that's that with this eye. Not pretty simple. Nothing too complicated in this video, at least in this version in my style. For the rest of the eye, at least the whites of the eye, I kind of give it a shade, and I'm going in here with a warm gray. You could go with a cool gray. Sometimes whether you go warm or cool depends on the temperature of the room and things like that, or just how you want to color it, but whatever. I'm going over the eye here, and also depends on the color of it. You know, here the eye white, so we're going over with like a gray, and we're shading just the top. I do the same thing to the other eyes below, and now we do the same thing here, where I pick, not exactly the same, so we're going to color this slightly differently, but we still picked a light green and a darker green. They're two different greens, but essentially they're both greens, one's darker and one's lighter, and that's what you go for. Here, again, I'm trying to achieve something like we did before, but here the motion, the hand motion here, the way I'm stroking the Copic markers to create the eye, is almost like similar to drawing focus lines, where all the lines are stroked in direction to like the middle of the eye, like the black dot in the middle, like the iris, and they're all pointing towards that. And after doing that, I take the darker green in this case, and I do the same thing from the edges of the eye. Again, I still take that darker green and I go round the highlights eventually, but you just create those lines that are pointing to the middle of the eye. Again, if you read Apple Black, you know whose eyes these are. Giving that shade at the top, that has more to do with like shading, but I'm still stroking towards the middle of the eye. So the top of the eye usually is going to be darker, and here we're going to create that effect of a gradient to some degree, that goes from darker to light from top to bottom. What you can do here in this, what some people do, I've seen in some styles, is you can go over this and add highlights to the eye. Here I'm going over the highlights with my kind of like white pigment pen, and just creating more highlights. You would see this in a lot of shonen genre manga, where the main character, or the female eyes or whatever, they have more highlights in them. So that's like a style of drawing, a popular way of drawing manga eyes in the shoujo genre, and it's really common when you're drawing like female characters, especially. Not always, but especially. The pigment pens here, sometimes you can allow it dry and you go over it again, but I'm not gonna. Don't really care too much. Don't really care too much for this. Here we're just drawing the eyes in simple ways. Coloring her eyebrows here, and moving on to the next eye. So here we're doing pretty much the similar concept where we take the lighter color, create something flat, and here we're going to take the darker color, shade around the highlights, shade at the top, giving that impression of a gradient going from dark to light from top to bottom. But before we even touch the darker shade, I'm still using that light blue to replicate that first before I pick up the darker blue to do the same. And in this case we have like 3 dots. We'll have like 3 dots representing the almost like the lines in the previous eye that are going from the edges to the middle of the eye. Here we just have 3, almost simplifying it in a way. And we're still coloring the tops, the top part of the eye. Here we have we're not seeing most of the eyeball. We have like almost like a lazy eye thing going on here with this character. Again, if you read my comic, you know who this is. Leave a comment if you know who these 3 characters are. Just curious to know who actually watches my videos and reads my manga. Here we're going with a different approach. Here I'm going to be using a ton of colors, but they all have this similar foundation where they're almost all the same color. Essentially, we're gonna go with this like browny, orangey, yellowy thing going on. If you look at like realistic eyes, say you look at a brown eye, if you look up closely, the whole eye is not just one brown color. It's like this pot of different browns forming this eye. Some parts of the eye forming some kind of gradient and things. A lot is going on. It's not like a flat color that you see in there. So here I'm having lines go from like the edges of the eye to the middle of the eye. Still had that darker shade at the top and around the dot in the middle of the eye. But then I went over it with a different color, like an orangey thing going on. Then I pick like a yellow orchard, and I'm just creating more lines, darkening the top again, and just slightly around the eye. You can see this eye is like an animalistic eye. We don't see that much of the whites. If you look at a cat, look at a dog, you don't see that much of the whites in the eye. Again, then I even picked an even darker, like a dark bark from like the Copic marker batch. And here you could add highlights. I'm not going to add highlights in this one. Highlights just, again, it's just a reflection, or it's like light shining on the eye. So if there's no light in the room, there wouldn't be any highlights. So if you wanted your style to have that realistic look, that's what you'd see. If you want to see how the eye will look with the highlights, there you go. And that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to like this video, leave a comment if you have any questions, and don't forget to subscribe. You can check out the 20 ways video that I have on drawing eyes, where I go with a little more detail. Links to that at the end, and a little note annotation at the end of the card. Don't forget that Apple Black's having a giveaway. You can check out the video about that in the description as well. And check out Saturday AM. Our 50th issue is going to be a special issue, so y'all can check that out if you subscribe to Saturday AM, the 25 premium subscription. You would have unlimited subscription. You wouldn't have to subscribe ever again in your life. Just saying. And yeah, that's it. So I'm Manga, and I'm outie.